Okay, okay, Chair Cote, it looks like we're streaming live. Okay, Chair Cote, I think we're streaming live now, so if you'd like, you can begin.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to call to order our Mayor's Council meeting. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the unceded and traditional territories of the Halkomelem, Semiahmoo, and Squamish-speaking peoples. These refer to the language groups that more widely encompass the Indigenous people of many nations who use and continue to use the land whose territory TransLink works, operates, and serves. So welcome, everyone. Before we get started, our normal recording secretary, Carol, is not with us today, so we do have Haley Lindau helping us here, if you see that name, and she'll be helping us through the meeting. So with that, I would like to look for approval of the agenda today.
Move adoption.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed and carried. And next we'll move to the approval of our minutes from our May 26th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, carried. Okay, we do have 7 public delegates with us here this morning so we are going to move to that portion of the agenda. The first speaker on my list, Mike, is Joy Johnson from Simon Fraser University.
That's correct. And it looks like she's on, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
We can, yeah. The floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to begin by saying I'm speaking to you today from Burnaby Mountain, the unceded traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Coquitlam, and Musqueam peoples. And it's really a pleasure to be here today. My name is Joy Johnson, and I am the President and Vice Chancellor of Simon Fraser University. And I am very, very grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you. And I want to thank you for your ongoing support of Simon Fraser University as we work together to build a more sustainable and inclusive future here in the Lower Mainland. I have to say that the shared strategy of Transport 2050 and the proposed 10-year vision strategy is ambitious. And I really want to applaud you for that ambition. The vision is really going to help build a leading public transit system and help achieve our climate goals. And these are both key components of this region's future, and we recognize this, as is the Burnaby Mountain Gondola. I think that sometimes people think that the Burnaby Mountain Gondola is the SFU gondola, and it is true that the gondola is going to benefit SFU students, faculty and staff, and people who have faced some of the longest commute times in the region. But the Burnaby Mountain Gondola is not just an SFU project, and I really want to underscore that. It is a project that's going to bring economic and social benefits to the city of Burnaby and, in fact, the entire region. And it's going to also help uphold our shared commitment to sustainability. I'm really encouraged that the gondola will support the 2050 10-year priorities plan by reducing TransLink operating costs and really helping to repurpose 24 buses, enabling them to be redeployed into the region. It's also going to encourage SFU's 7,500 faculty and staff and over 7,000 residents of Burnaby who live in university to spend more time on transit and engage and connect with the surrounding communities. And it's going to create new opportunities for businesses, tourism, culture, and sports by connecting research and employment hubs and also connecting people across the region. It is a safe, green, cost-effective, and forward-looking transit solution that's going to really leave a lasting legacy for generations to come. And SFU is fully committed to providing land and a financial contribution to the gondola's construction. And we look forward to working with TransLink and the Mayor's Council to seek further funding from senior levels of government and other programs as soon as possible. We've also appreciated that our past meetings with Forest Grove and university residents have been really productive, and we really remain committed to open dialogue and supporting SFU's surrounding communities. It's been a long road to get to this point, and there's still lots of work ahead. And as we continue, I want to say that we look forward to collaborating with TransLink, the City of Burnaby, to ensure that the gondola really becomes a key piece of the region's transportation infrastructure. It's work we're really glad to do because it means a lot to SFU. And I can say with confidence that the Burnaby Mountain Gondola will make life better for communities throughout the Lower Mainland. So I'm grateful for your support and really excited to consider how we might advance these priorities together. Thank you so much for your time and your efforts in putting this amazing plan together.
Well, thank you, Joy, very much for joining us today. I really appreciate being able to hear from you and the SFU community. We'll now move on to our next speaker. We have Clea Moret.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, we can, yes. Welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Clea Moret, and I represent the University Community Association. I'm here to speak in support of the Gondola project, and specifically to let you know why we feel that the gondola should be chosen for immediate implementation from among TransLink's 10-year priorities. Our residential neighborhood is next door to Simon Fraser University's Burnaby campus, but separate from it. We're a residential neighborhood of the city of Burnaby that's home to more than 7,000 people and growing.
Can you just be clear? Turn around to me, talk to me. I'm on a meeting.
Craig, if you could mute your microphone. Sorry about that, Clea.
No problem. Our community is a community with an above average number of young families and retirees, and we use transit at a higher rate than anyone else in the region outside of Vancouver's downtown peninsula. More than 25% of our residents commute on transit, and many more of us will join these ranks when the gondola makes transit to and from our homes faster and more reliable. Burnaby Mountain is the second busiest transit destination in TransLink's service area, but we suffer from the familiar problems of long waits and overcrowding. For more of our residents to make the switch from cars to transit, we need higher capacity during peak times and more frequent service outside of school hours. And the gondola will achieve this. We're really glad that the Mayor's Council included the gondola in its 10-year plan and that you've recognized the huge improvement that this project will bring to transit service for SFU users and for University community residents alike. Today, I want to highlight that for my community, the carbon reductions that this project represents are as important as those service improvements. We've all seen the harm done to BC by wildfires and last year's heat dome, and we've witnessed grass and forest fires become a common occurrence on Burnaby Mountain as summers become increasingly hotter and drier. Of the projects included in TransLink's 10-year priorities, the gondola has the highest payoff in terms of greenhouse gas emission reductions per dollar invested. The Burnaby Mountain Gondola is also one of the cheapest rapid transit options in TransLink's 10-year plan. And upon completion, it'll reduce TransLink's operating costs for this route by 30%. It's also a project that's relatively quick to build. So in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, low cost, and speed of implementation, this project stands out. We ask that you recognize that the gondola represents low-hanging fruit and make it one of the first projects that you implement of the 10-year priorities. Thanks very much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Clea, for joining us here this morning. We're now going to move on to our next public delegate, Nathan Davidovich. Relationship and contribute to the stewardship of the land and waters.
Hello? Nathan, can you please mute your YouTube live stream? There you go. Chair, there it is.
Okay.
Motion to adopt our agenda this morning. So Nathan, I think you might still have it playing if you can mute your computer. Seconded, all those in favor?
Yeah, that's fine. It's okay now. I made it. Whatever.
Okay. I think, Chair, I think we've got Nathan now.
Okay, Nathan, are you there?
Maybe we'll go. Maybe we'll go to if you'd like, Chair, we could go to the next speaker, and we come back to Nathan.
So Nathan, we can see you there, but it looks like you're just having a bit of trouble. We're going to go to the next speaker, and then we will come back. So the next speaker is Joe Kunstler.
I just joined him in. Joe, can you hear us?
Joe Kunstler can hear you just fine. Am I cleared?
Okay, welcome, Joe. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. I just wanted to speak briefly in support of the 10-year priorities of the Transport 2050 plan. I ask that you please pass it. It is an athletic plan. It is gritty. It is ingenious. It is moving forward. It is building on past successful pilot projects, as you can see pictured behind me, of the electric bus, and also you can see some bike lanes behind me, with some protection for bicyclists, and those are all good investments because we want to move people, not cars. And we want to do so in an anti-racist, anti-sexist way. I'm grateful that CEO Quinn and I were able to trade emails this morning. So future documents, you're going to see some staff prepares and hopefully some stuff of our future premier, at least Minister of TransLink, Bowen Ma. So exciting times, and just want to wish everyone well. And, hopefully we'll see more Sarah Ross bus lanes all over the place. So looking forward to it. Thanks for all your hard work and giving everyone hope in these difficult times on climate and American democracy. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us here this morning, Joe. So do we want to try again with Nathan? See if Nathan's here?
Yes, let me just try to unmute him. Nathan, can you hear us? You might need to unmute yourself.
Hello?
Hello, Nathan.
Oh, there's all kinds of technical problems with this channel. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, well, we can hear you now. So if so welcome, Nathan, and the floor is yours if you're able to do your delegation now.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, mayors, councillors, chiefs, and unelected members. There are many problems with the 10-year priorities report. On page 26, it says local bus service will be more than double, the largest increase in our region history. This is not true. The late Premier Dave Barrett has doubled the service in 3 years from 1973 to 1976, plus build 2 small sea buses. No proper details are given. Will the cuts to the 50 bus routes that were implemented since COVID started be returned? Every other major transit system in Canada has returned to the pre-COVID level of service. What about the cuts from 2001 to 2020? When will they be returned? Metro Vancouver is behind on per capita basis compared to other big metro areas in Canada. We are number 4 now, and before 2030, we'll be number 6, unless massive catch-up funding is provided by the BC government. Will you advocate for that? Minister Heyman has already announced on page 7, he approved your report. Well, Minister Heyman has lots of problems in transit and the environment. And that's why myself and many other people will be demonstrating outside his office on July the 4th. Transport 2050 and Metro 2050 are like sister publications, and you have to refer this plan or the 10-year priority plan to all municipalities and First Nations for comments. And I think you'll be surprised the comments you're going to get, and either yourself or the new politicians after the October 15, 2022 civic election will have to change this 10-year priorities plan. So thank you very much for hearing me, and I don't know what happened to the other delegates. I didn't hear them. I don't know. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you very much, Nathan, for joining us this morning. We're going to now move on to our next delegate, Glenn Porter. Is Glenn here?
Glenn is just connecting. Maybe, let me just, I'll try admitting Christine here and see if that connects quicker. So maybe as Glenn is waiting to connect, we could, I'd suggest we go to the next delegate, Christine Cunningham. It looks like she's on.
Okay, Christine, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I just don't know how to mute the live stream. That was something I was told to do.
I'm not hearing any feedback, so I think we might be okay, Christine.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I would ask that you turn to the map in our in my materials, if you can. That map will help explain what it is I'm talking to you about. Do you have it?
Yeah, I think we have all the materials. So
okay, great. Okay, so in the middle of that map, there are numbers of daily boardings on the various bus routes that have a terminus at SFU. The two bottom bus routes, the 145 and the 143, you can see that the number of boardings on those two bus routes, those are just one-way boardings. So if you want to get a better picture of what's happening, you need to kind of half those numbers, because most of the trips on the 145 and 143 routes are round trips to or from SFU. I'm pointing this out to you because there has been stated in many occasions that there's 25,000 trips a day that are going to be saved by a gondola. And as you can see, these two figures add up to nothing like 25,000 trips a day. So that information has been misleading. It is, I'm speaking to you today as on my own behalf and as a member of the Forest Grove community. We consider that SFU is a powerful lobbyist. They have been lobbying TransLink for over a decade to get a gondola. The problem they have faced is that TransLink is not an elected body, and its decision-making needs to be based on regional transportation needs, not on other reasons that lie in the political realm. At first, SFU tried to argue for a gondola based on complaints by students that the bus service was late, overcrowded, and there were long waits to get on buses. TransLink said that the Production Way bus depot was too small to run additional buses at the station. SFU and TransLink said that a gondola would solve these student complaints and concerns. The Mayor's Council, in its wisdom, back in 2015, required TransLink to improve its bus service from Production Way to SFU to see if the problems that the students complained of could be resolved in the normal course of operations. By 2019, all the metrics on the 145 bus route were vastly improved. The bus route was ranked #1 out of 207 routes for on-time departures. It was ranked 102nd out of 214 for overcrowding, and so on. It was busy for sure. It is ranked the 42nd busiest route out of 212 Metro Vancouver routes, but it was and is working well at this point in time. SFU then had to change its rationale for a gondola. It now focuses on the idea that a gondola will shorten passenger commute time on the from the 145 route from between 6 and 12 minutes, depending on where the terminal ends up at SFU. They don't speak about adding to the walking time of students who have to now walk in a different direction to get where they're going up at SFU. They don't speak about the additional time that it would take if they cancel the 143 bus route and people have to now take the SkyTrain from Burquitlam Station around to Production Way in order to get up to SFU.
So Christine, we have reached the end of the time, but I do want to give you an opportunity maybe just to provide a summary conclusion to your comments.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my point is that there is no critical transportation need at this time that needs to be addressed, that SFU should do its part to address any future transportation needs by building the online campus housing that they said they would do, and that there are options, many options to add additional bus routes from Lougheed Station or Production, mainly from Lougheed Station to get students up to SFU, and that the bus fleet will be converted to EV buses in the next decade, and EV buses would be ideally suited to go up to SFU, and that they would not require going through 2 conservation areas. They would, that the buses would be able to go up the existing road network. So we feel that there's no need to, we're asking you not to approve the inclusion of a gondola, a major transit expansion project, on this weak basis, not to approve it for the 10-year priority list.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us here this morning, Christine. We're now going to go back to Glenn Porter if he is available. I'm not seeing Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn is definitely joined. Glenn, I think your microphone and your camera are both off. If you can try unmuting, you might be able to hear you. Okay, well, the following speaker, Alex Boston, is here, and it sounds like he's live. So if you'd like, we could go to Alex while hopefully Glenn sorts out his connection challenges. Glenn, you might try leaving the meeting and then reconnecting, and then we can try it again.
Okay, sounds good. So we will go to Alex Boston. Welcome, Alex.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, directors, other participants. Am I coming in loud and clear?
Yep, we can hear you perfectly.
Thank you. I think it's serendipitous, strangely and sadly, that we're on the 1-year anniversary of the vaporization of Lytton in under 30 minutes, also in the middle of the heat dome. And what it really underscores is, A, cities are really vulnerable, and it's in large part how we build them. 2, cities are major contributors of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, in BC, car-oriented growth is amongst the largest driver of GHG growth since 2007. And this is a circle we have to square. There's great priorities in this plan, and I think it should be adopted. I think one of the most important statements is on page 23, tools in the toolkit. The best transportation plan is a good land use plan, quote unquote, TransLink. Unfortunately, we are building the equivalent of 65 square kilometers in low density peripheral development, the equivalent of a medium-sized municipality. That is going to increase in this region 1 billion kilometers of additional driving by 2040. It'll put upwards pressure on the light duty vehicle emissions by 5%. These are completely incompatible, tragically, with the Transportation 2050 agenda. It's also going to increase civic infrastructure deficits. Currently, the goals in the plan, convenient choices for everyone, affordable choices for everyone, they sound nice, but they're not fiscally responsible given our land use agenda. There is great new priorities in the 10-year plan. Gondola, I will concur. BRT, these are important innovations that can be super cost effective for meeting our goals. Some of our goals we should really keep. The climate target is absolutely critical. I want to really focus on implementation and untapped revenue opportunities. I was disappointed that the TransLink's fantastic transit service guidelines weren't in the 10-year priorities. These are a critical tool. They're not strong enough, but it's a solid foundation to work on. The supportive policy agreements, we really need to strengthen these. We have BRT proposals going through extensive corridors that are currently hollowing out. This should not be permissible. And it's not just about what happens inside corridors. We have to consider what happens outside corridors. We have parts of this region where we have faster growth outside transit corridors than inside transit corridors. Supportive policy agreements should address not only the corridors, but what happens outside them. Zoning bylaws are the single biggest untapped revenue generation tool for TransLink. You look at an urban region like Barcelona, 60% of the population is within 1 kilometer of rapid transit, and they have fewer rapid transit kilometers per capita. 80% of their operational revenue comes from fare box. 60% of trips are transit mode share. This is the direction we have to move in. The last recommendation is taking advantage of our underutilized strategic transit land, Coast Mountain and SkyTrain stations, bus exchanges, depots. Most of these are surface parking lots. We should be stacking them with affordable housing, with commercial, with retail. This can be a revenue stream for TransLink on an enduring basis. They should be built of mass timber. This is a huge.
So Alex, we have reached the end of the time, but I do want to give you an opportunity just to kind of have a summary concluding remark.
I'm right there. We have to really recognize taxpayer value for dollar is important, particularly in our current environment. We can thread multiple needles with a single thread, but we have to do it together. We have to think in an integrated manner. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you very much, Alex, for joining us this morning. And we're going to go back to Glenn Porter. I did see him rejoin, so hopefully he's better connected. Glenn, are you here?
Glenn, you're still muted. The mute button's in the bottom. It should be in the bottom left corner, I think, of your screen. But we can't hear you or see you. So Chair, we can certainly invite him back, to speak at the following meeting or provide a written submission after. I'm not sure we'll be able to easily sort out the connection problems though during the meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry, Glenn, we haven't been able to connect, but we do need to move along on our agenda, and I want to thank all of the delegates for joining us here this morning. So we're going to move to item number 3 on the agenda this morning, which is a report from TransLink Management, and I'm going to pass this off to Kevin Quinn.
Okay, good morning, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'll be, I don't know if you want to throw up the slides here. In my management report today, I will be providing an update on ridership and also sharing with you a few new and exciting programs, such as our real estate development program, the bike bus program, and our TransLink's first volunteer program. So next slide, please. In great news, ridership continues to climb each week, particularly last week, as June has finally really started to look like summer. We hit an all-time high for weekly ridership recovery at 75% of boardings compared to the same week in 2019. And in previous weeks where we had experienced rainy weather, we had been closer to about 72% recovery. So we are seeing an impact from the warmer weather for sure. Additionally, and perhaps even more exciting, we also hit an all-time high for weekend boardings since the pandemic began. And this past weekend, we reached 83% compared to the same weekend in 2019. So interestingly, we've been consistently seeing weekend recovery higher than weekday recovery. And good weather combined with fun events happening around the region, like the 2 recent BC Lions home games, have been a real recipe for success. For example, for the Lions home opener on June 11th, 10,000 customers boarded transit at Stadium Chinatown SkyTrain station. And this is more than double the amount of boardings we saw on a recent Saturday without an event. And all of this, I think, goes to show that when people have somewhere to go, they're continuing to choose transit. Needless to say, the resurgence of events and festivals in our regions is a really good sign for our ridership recovery. But events and warm weather are not the only reasons we've really stayed ahead of most other Canadian and American transit agencies for ridership recovery. We've also run a number of campaigns and initiatives targeting new riders while encouraging regular riders to come back to the system. You may remember we launched a sweepstakes campaign for the first time in TransLink history, where we gave our riders prizes just for using transit, and the response was extremely positive. There were over 4.5 million trips taken during the campaign by customers who entered the contest. The Reconnect campaign encouraged people to reconnect with Metro Vancouver by offering riders discounts to many tourist attractions when they took transit to get there. And just yesterday, we launched Ride and Shine, a new summer campaign encouraging people to go car-free this summer and instead take transit to explore the region in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as part of this campaign, TransLink is sponsoring several car-free days of summer to bring the local community together to experience their vibrant neighborhoods in an environmentally sustainable way. So with increased service that has now started to popular summer destinations like beaches and parks, we'll continue to monitor how ridership recovers as people get back to exploring this beautiful region. Next slide, please. After the last few years, I think we can all agree that we can't rely on steady ridership to generate revenue to fund projects and continue to deliver exceptional service for our customers. We have to find other solutions. And so just last week at our annual general meeting, we shared that work has commenced on our new real estate development program. And this exciting program will not only help to generate a new long-term revenue source, but it will also create transit-oriented lifestyles by building residential, commercial, or mixed-use developments near transit. It's not surprising that our region supports this initiative and welcomes it here after seeing the benefits that other transit agencies around the world have experienced, such as Hong Kong, London, and Paris. I want to take a moment and recognize and really appreciate your endorsement of this program that also reflects alignment with the provinces and local government's goals of increasing housing supply and creating more transit-oriented communities. This program is still in its early days, but I really look forward to working with you on future development opportunities to generate revenue that doesn't rely on taxation or on fares. And so collaboratively with this council and the board of directors, we'll work to create better transit-oriented communities and advance the regional growth strategy. Next slide, please. I've been in Vancouver for almost a year now, and so it was nice to see the temperatures finally warm up last week as kids are finishing school for the year and we're all welcoming the start of summer. We all know active transportation is a key element of this region, and many of us cycle to meetings and work as the weather warms up. But biking is also a great way to get to many of our beautiful parks and beaches. And having a convenient and well-connected cycling network is something I know we all support. So I was incredibly proud to launch the new bike bus program last week as we see more people cycling to their favorite destinations. And for the bike bus, we've retrofitted 4 buses with 7 interior bicycle racks, bringing the total bike capacity aboard to 9, up from the standard 2. So this new design will provide more room for bicycles between Bridgeport Station and Tsawwassen Ferry Terminal this summer, one of the most popular routes for our cycling customers. And this project is part of TransLink's Customer Experience Action Plan, which we announced in March. And as you know, one of the plan's top priorities is making transit easier to use by identifying better options for active transportation. This bike bus will more easily integrate bike and transit travel during one of the busiest times of the year for cyclists. I'm also really excited to have launched this at the same time of our summer service changes, which boosted service to key beaches, parks, and warm weather destinations. Next slide, please. The last item I want to touch on is, I think it's just so timely. We've just opened the call out for volunteers for our first ever community transit volunteer program to help customers connect with communities and have the best possible transit experience. So the response to our call out has been nothing short of outstanding. So far, over 180 neighborhood experts across the region have expressed interest in the program. Our interviews are underway, and you'll see these trained volunteers out on the system as early as mid-July. And if you are out on the system and you meet one of our community transit volunteers this summer, be sure to thank them for their contribution to their community. Next slide, please. With that, that's my short update. I'd like to thank you so much for your time today, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Kevin, for that update. And definitely those ridership statistics are really encouraging, even just the bump up we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So really appreciate the update. So we'll open up to the floor. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you. It's not a question. I just want to applaud the bike bus initiatives and all of the efforts we're trying to do. As we know, the electric assist bike has been a game changer for folks with grayer hair. And those of us who take the two wheels love the option of being able to put it on a bike, on a bus, and get further. So thank you very much to TransLink for advancing that option for active transportation.
Well, thank you, Mayor Stewart. Director McCutcheon.
Thank you. Starting off similar to Director Stewart, I just wanted to thank staff for that. I think it's an excellent contribution. We do have, as you said, Kevin, that we have a very active region, and I think this multi-mode share and the more we can integrate all kinds of different ways of transporting people, except cars, around the region is great. One thing I have heard, I'm not sure if it's a huge majority of people, but families with bikes have a hard time with the current setup because you have to have at least a 26-inch wheel to get on that. And as an active family of bikers, I guess my encouragement to staff is to keep looking outside of the box. This was a great option. And I think that I don't have the solutions, but I'm sure there's all kinds of creative additional ways we can get even more bikes onto even more buses for our extremely active communities. So, but thank you. I love this as well. I can't wait to try it out. Thanks.
No, thank you, Director McCutcheon. Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I too just want to echo my colleagues around the bike bus and just how many people this week that I ran into who are excited. We're really excited to hear about that. So kudos to you, Kevin, and your team. And I'm just curious, and perhaps I missed it. Sorry, I was also reading something when you were talking as well. But it is with the 4 buses, is any of them going to be for the Horseshoe Bay terminal? Because we have a lot of people who come from, whether it be Bowen Island or the coast, as well as Vancouver Island, who would easily take their bikes with having that option that can get them, whether they're coming to the North Shore to do their work or pleasure, but also are commuting for work off the North Shore, but have to go through it.
Thank you, Mayor Buchanan. It's a fantastic question. It's something that we've certainly heard loud and clear. We're aware that from both of the ferry terminals, there's a lot of bicycle traffic, and we have heard from our customers that that's a desire out of Horseshoe Bay. This first piece is just a pilot running out of Tsawwassen to really see how it works. Right, the design that we have for the interior was designed by our own employees, so we want to see how that shakes out, how that works. And we'll run that Friday, Saturday, Sunday throughout the entire summer. But the idea of this as a pilot is that, to continue to refine this. And I think certainly our goal is eventually to roll that out to Horseshoe Bay as well.
Well, that's fantastic. And I look forward to trying it out myself this summer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Buchanan. Mayor Ross.
I'd just like to echo my thank you to Kevin and staff for that work on Bike Bus. And I know that you're getting incredible encouragement now to roll it out. And some of the parks and stuff would be, obviously, as we do it in succession, would be good places. I also just want to echo something that didn't come up in your report, but the mobility conference this week. And I really want to, I was able to attend, and it was a very impressive conference, and I think it brought together a wide group of people for very good discussions about things that we can continue to do. And I would like to just acknowledge, you spoke about your everyday use of transit at that, and I thought that was an impressive act of leadership, and it kind of flew under the radar on the day, but I wanted to acknowledge that today. I think that's a good piece, and thank you very much for your continued leadership and for the great work done by staff. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Ross. I'm not seeing any further hands, so I'll just look for a motion just to receive the CEO's report.
Moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and it's carried. We're now on to item 4.1 of the agenda, which is the transit service partnership in Fraser Mills. And I'm going to pass it on to Matt Craig to just give a brief presentation on this item.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I wanted to provide a quick update to the Mayor's Council on what is really a new approach to funding transit expansion in our region. It's also an example of us developing new policy through action. So my team has been working with the City of Coquitlam and BD Development to complete a transit service partnership for the planned Fraser Mills development in Southwest Coquitlam. Next slide, please. So if you cast your mind back to just before the pandemic really arrived, at our last in-person Mayor's Council in February 2020, we introduced a policy framework for development of what we were calling transit service partnerships. And the Mayor's Council and the board directed staff to continue developing the approach for transit service partnerships for this Fraser Mills development. So what is a transit service partnership? It involves an agreement with a third party, so not TransLink, who would fund transit service to improve access within the region. Unlike our independent transit service, which is service provided or service approved by TransLink, but provided by others, transit service partnerships would be fully operated by TransLink with no distinction to the customers. They have the potential to be applied in three ways: augmenting existing service, accelerating planned service improvements, or extending service into new areas. Next slide, please. The Fraser Mills development is a 92-acre redevelopment in Southwest Coquitlam and has been going through the planning process at the City of Coquitlam. When fully built out, the site would have approximately 5,500 residential units, 800,000 square feet of commercial, and a new community center. And as part of the conditions for development approval, the City of Coquitlam has required BD Development to ensure a number of travel demand management initiatives are in place, including that the proposed development be serviced by frequent all-day transit service, and that this frequent transit network level service be in place in advance of residential occupancy. The board direction back from February 2020 was that we should continue enter into negotiations with BD Development Group for this agreement, and on the principle of no increase in net cost to TransLink. Next slide, please. So the key components of our service agreement that we've been working through have included really three key things. What is the service and what does that cost? And so to achieve that frequent transit network level of service, while providing the most efficient service design, the service covered by the transit service partnership would be what we call a short-term shuttle service, which really concentrates the frequency on a segment of an existing line. And that would connect Braid Station with Fraser Mills and augment the existing 159 service that you see on the map. So that has been the first element, is defining what is the service, which then drives the cost. The annual operating cost of that service would be just over $1 million annually, and requires 2 additional community shuttle vehicles. So through the agreement, 100% of this cost would be covered by BD Development through this agreement. The next key element is when would it start? So service would be implemented in advance of the very first resident moving into the development. And this is this would be tied to Coquitlam issuing occupancy permits, and was a key component of the development approval process by the City of Coquitlam. It's estimated that this could become as early as 2026, and we've got provisions to make sure that we're not surprised and ready for when that service is ready to go. And then the final element was, when would the service conclude? It was never intended that a third party would cover this expanded service in perpetuity. And so what we did was we tied the agreement to the development and the conditions, and particularly around the expected transit demand, using our transit service guidelines that include population and employment densities and other elements that we would expect to generate the level of transit demand that we would see and want to expect for productive frequent all-day service. This works out to approximate 50% of the development build out. And if everything goes as planned, would estimate to take about 6 to 8 years from when the service starts. These components are all included and detailed in a non-binding term sheet that is being signed by BD and TransLink and as required by the City of Coquitlam. Yeah, this last slide. So I've already spoken to some of this, but hopefully providing it visually is a little more helpful for next steps. Following approval of the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendments, we would use the elements in the term sheet to sign a binding agreement with BD. And then next steps would be really between now and when the development proceeds, anticipated sometime in around 2026. So prior to residents moving in, we would require advance notice from the developer to ensure that we're ready to implement. Once the service begins, we'd monitor both the service and the development. We have a requirement to then be informed when the development is 1 year away from that 50% development threshold. And once we've reached that point, there would be decisions at TransLink and at the region and with the Mayor's Council, including options of continuing the service through the funding in an investment plan, or through reallocation of existing service, or not continuing the service. And all of this would depend on the financial and kind of policy context that we're at the time. What I can say is that we would anticipate that if we're well into implementation of Transport 2050 10-year priorities, assuming that that advances, that this service would be a really good candidate for this level of service based on what we see from the type of development. And again, really want to express kudos to the City of Coquitlam for requiring this new kind of new approach to ensuring that we can be implementing transit service coordinated and timed with new development. So happy to answer any questions or feedback.
Okay, thank you, Matt, for the presentation. We'll open it up. Mayor Stewart.
Thank you, and I do want to thank staff. This has been a long time in the works. This particular development is about 2 kilometers of walk from the Braid station. Obviously, 2 kilometers is a little bit further than a typical scenario. It's on a bike route though, so it is possible that some people will use active transportation to get to SkyTrain. It is much more likely that the demand will be there for a frequent transit service. And we appreciate very much that BD did agree to come to the table on this initiative to try to figure out how to subsidize this service from the first occupancy. And the critical part of that is that we have another development, obviously in Burke Mountain, where we ended up encouraging folks to settle into this new community, but with the promise that we would get bus service. So many of those folks actually ended up buying the second car because the bus service didn't materialize. And so we end up perhaps generationally changing the way that they're going to commute from their new neighborhood. We want this one to have the opportunity to get folks from the very moment that they move in, the kinds of bus service to connect them to the loop, essentially the SkyTrain loop, early on. So this is much appreciated, and I'm looking forward to seeing positive results with scenario 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and very enthused insofar as seeing this type of project go ahead, and thanks to TransLink staff and of course Coquitlam Mayor Stewart. Mr. Chair, I wonder if it'd be something we could discuss in an appropriate timing in camera. I'd be very interested to see some of the legal documents insofar as seeing how we could perhaps do a similar type of project in Delta. But I believe that would be more appropriate looking at and discussing the finding, et cetera, in an in-camera session at the chair's choice of time.
Yep, I'm sure that can be accommodated, and I know this is a type of program that obviously, if successful, I think has many other applications in the region, and I think getting a good understanding of those legal components, I think, would be useful for the group. So I'll leave that with Mike and Kevin, but I do think an appropriate follow-up to engage in that discussion, I think would be a really good discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much. And I do think that this is an interesting application and our way in which to advance transit. I know we have somewhat, not quite the same, but something in terms of at a harborside development in the city. But I am curious, and maybe this is something we also should discuss and close, but if I look at Matt's last slide, page 21, which talks about the different scenarios, it says services included in the investment plan. So I'm curious as to how, we would look when we've approved an investment plan, we're looking at approving our 10-year priorities, when we have many municipalities that are looking at larger developments. If we continue to sort of look at this sort of way to deliver transit, how does that work in terms of our staff capacity as well as, inclusion within our investment plan when we haven't discussed that in the priorities? So it just sounds like we would be adding to an already strained financial picture. So I don't know if someone can answer that now and we can discuss it more, specifically and close, but that's my concern in terms of we are adding potentially sprawl to something that we're actually trying to keep the spine and connect to, compact 15-minute communities based on the goals and visions that we've been working through over the last year.
So I'm wondering, Matt, if you can maybe just speak to how, I think to Mayor Buchanan's question is really getting into how would the evaluation between those scenarios go? How would it be evaluated amongst all the other priorities that TransLink considers in its investment plans there?
I think you're both right, and we're talking, it's a future process that would go through for the development of that future investment plan. Historically, we have always provided kind of hopefully clear objectives that drive the evaluation of, as you say, Mayor Buchanan, we have a long list of needs in the region for transit expansion. And so I think that process would involve, that development and agreement on some clear objectives to evaluate those priorities, and then going through that list of priorities and providing, measures and metrics to do that evaluation. So that's that future process that would come through that investment plan.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Mayor Little.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Matt. I guess there's really two elements. One is the whether you support the concept and principle, and I do support the concept and principle. I think that we obviously have to be cautious about where we let private dollars determine our priorities in some cases, but I think that could be totally reasonable in this case. The question I would have is about the specific route, really, though. Why go so far north just to come back south again? Why cross the highway 2 times in an area that already has bus service along about 70% of its length, when you could go straight down Burrard and United Boulevard, add bus service to a whole bunch of businesses that don't currently have bus service, and you'd have a more direct route? Is it just simply concerns about rail delays, or is there any other way we could basically, rather than duplicating the old routes for most of its length, extend it to other areas that it could service?
Okay, well, I know bus service doesn't go through that area, Mayor Little. I think you know that area as well too, so it does have some challenges, but I'll let TransLink staff kind of articulate why the bus route does what it does in that area.
Yeah, I think you identified some of them. It's based on the kind of existing road network and wanting to be able to provide reliable service. There's a rail crossing along that section of Braid, just before Braid Station. And I think wanting to provide the service that can be reliable. I think the other element is some benefits to serving that existing section of Brunette and Lougheed. There's lots of commercial and residential areas in there that do see some destinations for connection between Fraser Mills. It's not all about just getting direct to Braid Station. And then lastly, I think we did look at the travel time. There isn't significant difference in the travel time between the two.
If I may, just as a follow-up, we also wear Metro Vancouver hats, and we are a major employer in that corridor, and it would be great to get bus service to the Metro facility that's along United Boulevard there, as well as the many other businesses in that area.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Little. So I don't see any further speakers. This is just a report for information, so I'll look to the body if they'd like to move for receipt.
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and it's carried. Okay, that brings us to the end of our regular Mayor's Council meeting, but we do have a joint meeting with the TransLink board. So I will look for a motion to adjourn, but don't go away because we do have a joint meeting. So if I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And why don't we give a 4-minute break and start right at 10 o'clock for the joint Mayor's Council TransLink board meeting. Does that work, Mike?
Actually, we adjusted the times yesterday online, so we actually, if you'd like, we can start right away. It's up to you, but certainly online in the agenda that's posted, the meeting shows is starting at 9:45, so we won't be catching anyone off guard.
Okay, well, I wanted to give everyone a 3-minute break, but I think Mike wants to keep going, so we're going to keep going. Do we have all the board members present in the meeting?
Haley, how is it looking? It looks like we have them, everyone.
Yeah, as far as I can see, everyone's still here. We definitely have quorum.
Yes, and to confirm, Chair, I think we've got all of the board members. Brad, are you able to confirm that? Brad? Sorry, not Mayor West.
Yes,
Brad Monet.
Yeah, I think we at least have quorum. Just double checking.
You're going to get your 3-minute break anyways, Mayor Cote.
Yeah, we look good, I think, for the board members.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Well, with that, then I will call to order our joint Mayor's Council and TransLink board meeting here. So welcome everyone, and welcome to the TransLink board members for connecting and joining the meeting. I think this is our second month in a row we've gotten to connect like that, but obviously some big work that we're working on here. For the more formal motions, as we are aware, we will separate between the board and the Mayor's Council for legislative reasons. For some of the more informal stuff, that won't be necessary. So we are just going to start with adoption of the agenda.
Moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, and if we can get adoption and approval of our minutes from our May 26th meeting.
Moved.
Moved. Second.
Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Okay, the big reason we're connecting here together today is the Transport 2050 10-year priorities, and I want to first introduce Kevin Quinn to introduce this item to both bodies.
Well, good morning, everyone. Again, good to see you all, and we're so excited to be here today to present Transport 2050 10-year priorities. I would like to turn this over, Chair, to Sarah Ross, Vice President of Planning and Policy for TransLink, to present this item.
Great. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really pleased to be with you today, recommending that the board and the Mayor's Council endorse the Transport 2050 10-year priorities as the implementation priorities for delivering on our 30-year regional transportation strategy. Next slide, please. Now, as a quick reminder of a significant milestone that we're building on today, the unanimous adoption of Transport 2050 in January was key to the future of transportation in Metro Vancouver. Informed by our largest public engagement ever, Transport 2050, so the new regional transportation strategy, is our roadmap for the next 30 years. And it identifies projects, services, and policies to make transportation better for everyone, no matter who you are or how you travel. And Transport 2050 strives to make transportation in the region more convenient, reliable, safe, comfortable, and carbon-free. And we're here today because it's time to put this 30-year plan into action. Next slide, please. You may have seen some of this coverage earlier this spring when we launched public engagement for the 10-year priorities. And so just 6 months after approval of Transport 2050, we're moving to approve the 10-year priorities. We're moving with urgency because that's what's required of us right now. We're living through an accelerating climate emergency, an affordability crisis that's leaving many struggling in this already very expensive region, and of course, our ongoing recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And we know that good transportation can help address many of these issues. I think that the headline from the North Shore News in the top right corner of the slide sums it up nicely. People need solutions now. So what do we do about this? Next slide, please. So Transport 2050 is the grand 30-year strategy. The 10-year priorities is our plan for delivering the first decade of investment outlined in that long-term strategy. It sets out what we as a region think we should get started on right away. Next slide, please. One of the most important takeaways is that the 10-year priorities takes a bus-first approach with historic investments to double local bus service. We're working to ensure Handy Dart service can meet future demand with the goal of making this a 24-hour service. We're proposing to increase service on C-Bus and SkyTrain to improve convenience and reduce crowding. And finally, we're proposing significant improvements to passenger safety and comfort at transit stops, stations, and exchanges. Next slide, please. This map illustrates the 10-year priorities in one snapshot. So investing in convenient and reliable transit, like expanding bus service, adding transit priority infrastructure, and safe and comfortable transit facilities, supporting people-first streets and walking, biking, and rolling, and building out the reliable and fast network, including the expansion of the rapid bus network, new rapid transit lines, and express and interregional connections. Next slide, please. So the 10-year priorities proposes 170 kilometers of new rapid transit, including up to 9 bus rapid transit corridors, a technology we haven't seen in this region since the busway in Richmond became the Canada Line. And I'll speak more about bus rapid transit or BRT in a couple of slides. Other investments called for in this 10-year priorities includes the Burnaby Mountain Gondola, the Millennium Line UBC extension, as well as plans to study SkyTrain extensions in Surrey along King George Boulevard, and to downtown Port Coquitlam. These corridors support Metro Vancouver's 2050 growth management framework in providing service to areas where the region is expected to grow and along the key growth corridors. Next slide, please. On this map, you can see the extent of the reliable and fast transit network, our commitment to improving interregional connections, and a list of the corridors for rapid transit investment. I'd like to just spend a moment on the North Shore, talking about the North Shore. For the first time in any regional plan, there's wide consensus that we must bring rapid transit to the North Shore. However, connecting the North Shore with rapid transit is more challenging really than any other corridor in the region for several reasons. It's very long, approximately 20 kilometers. It traverses 5 municipalities, 2 First Nations, a major provincial highway corridor, 2 railways, and the port. And of course, it requires crossing a major waterway at a point already crowded by 2 existing bridges, 2 railways, those active port operations. And given this complexity and what could be very high cost, our plan recognizes that a decision on rapid transit technology and alignment will require substantial planning and consultation. And we're committed to beginning this planning work as a first priority. And at the same time, we will begin to plan and build traffic separated BRT, bus rapid transit, so that the North Shore can benefit from vastly improved transit as soon as possible. The alternative would be we want to move quickly on bus rapid transit while also planning for the ultimate long-term solution for that corridor. So just a little bit more on BRT. It differs from the rapid bus that we have in place today, mainly with the use of dedicated lanes that keep buses out of congestion. So the BRT buses are more reliable for the people who use them. It's defined by, it is rapid transit defined by 3 key features. So that first, traffic separation, and signal priority. So it keeps the BRT vehicles, or I like to say more importantly, the people who are on those vehicles moving quickly and reliably. Second, stations and the boarding experience. So prepayment, quick boarding, high quality stations. So the really high level of passenger experience. And third, vehicles, so more specialized vehicles. Sometimes it's really more like rails on rubber wheels, offering excellent customer experiences with spacious interiors and amenities, and consistent with our low carbon fleet commitments. These would be zero emission vehicles. Next slide, please. The other reasons for these focuses, it's cost effective. It means we can build out a lot more rapid transit and which then provides a competitive option to driving. That's cost effective because it's utilizing existing road infrastructure largely. As such, it can also be done quickly. It can take much less time. So which means we can move several BRT lines in a matter of years instead of waiting decades. And as I've mentioned, we need to act with urgency because climate emergency, the affordability crisis, and because people want and need rapid transit now, but we have to be upfront about the trade-offs. No technology is perfect, and every form of rapid transit comes with trade-offs. And for BRT, this will require us to redeploy existing road space and dedicate that to fast-moving transit. Next slide, please. It has been a success story in many parts of the world, first pioneered in Colombia to deliver rapid transit quickly in traffic clogged cities, and is now found worldwide. We have it in other Canadian cities like in Calgary and Ottawa, and in cities across the world, South America, Asia, Australia, and the US. And there's been a lot of investment in the last 10 to 15 years in particular. Next slide, please. We're also proposing historic investments in transforming people-first streets to make active travel safer and more convenient. We're doing this to make active transportation the most convenient choice for short trips, because walking and cycling are really the most affordable and sustainable ways to get around. And there's so much we can do to champion these modes and help people feel safe while they're using them. And so the 10-year priorities commits to active transportation in a big way by adding a game-changing 450 kilometers of new traffic separated cycling paths, along with new bike lockers, bike parkades, upgrading the BC Parkway and other facilities. Next slide, please. We know that public and stakeholder support is critical to successfully implementing this plan. Transport 2050 highlighted the need to engage Indigenous First Nations and social equity seeking groups. Throughout the spring of this year, we engaged the public, Indigenous First Nations, and social equity groups to get their feedback. We've incorporated that feedback into the final 10-year priorities document, which also includes actions to advance reconciliation and improve social equity. Next slide, please. So the 10-year priorities are the first big chapter in a big, bold plan for the transportation in the region. And as you'll know, there is approximately $20 billion slated for new capital expansion over the next decade, more than double the investments outlined in the 2014 Mayor's Council 10-year vision. And to fund these priorities will require a revolution in how we think about funding our transit expansions and operations. As Kevin mentioned in the Mayor's Council meeting just now, last week we announced our real estate development program, which is a creative way to generate funding for transit service. And then there's much more work to do to identify additional long-term funding, but this is an example of the kind of thinking that we're going to need to bring to bear to meet the challenges of our times. And we need to have conversations with senior governments and other key stakeholders and this table to round those shared objectives so that we can tackle our shared commitments to tackling climate change and congestion. Next slide, please. So in terms of the next steps, why we're here today, we're recommending the board and the Mayor's Council approve these 10-year priorities. And then subject to that approval, we would begin to work on the planning work to advance the projects and into the work to prepare the next investment plan, which is the method by which we confirm the funding and start delivering on these priorities in the coming year. And we will continue through that work to engage with both the board, the Mayor's Council, and all of our partners and communities. We know that there's a strong consensus across all levels of government and the public on our overarching objectives, and it's going to take us all rowing in that same direction, especially when it comes to funding and road space reallocation to really make these priorities a reality. Next slide, please. And so with that, I will conclude. Thank you for your time today. The staff team, Kevin, the staff team, and I are here and happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah, for the presentation. I really appreciate not only the presentation, but all the work you've done and your entire team that has really helped guide and help really come to life and take the work we did with Transport 2050, but really start to translate that in the 10-year priorities. Really appreciate that. So we are going to open up to questions. Later on in the meeting, we're going to go to both bodies in terms of the approval and discussion about the plan, but we did want to give an opportunity before we get to that section to open up to any questions about this for the staff team. Mayor Morden.
Apologies, Mr. Chair, it was just comments, so I'll save those.
Oh, okay, Mayor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. The first one is on the map. I don't necessarily see a page on it, but it's the reliable and fast transit network. I'm wondering what the deadhead is as you come down into South Surrey White Rock. Is that actually at the 99 and King George interchange where there's the large bus loop in that area already?
In terms of the connection that would feed into White Rock, I think that is probably a level of detail we haven't worked out yet at exactly where the right turnaround would be and the right final terminus. And that is, as we work on corridor specific planning, we would work with you and your team on determining that.
That's great. I would just urge that it be considered coming farther down the King George Highway into the South Surrey, or not necessarily into White Rock, but certainly South Surrey, where we can get the connections. The second question is around smaller First Nation, Semi-Emu First Nation. I'm not sure what, if any, transit, kind of connections there are there, coming into the White Rock area. So I think that's another area. Just I don't know, but I would urge you to have a look at that and make sure that is part of the overall scheme. Thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Walker. Marcella.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. And once again, thank you to you and your team for the enormous amount of work that's taken you to get here. My question's around the BRT buses, which are slightly different than the regular street buses that we are used to seeing. Have you had a chance yet to explore the availability, the construction or ordering of those buses? Or is it just too early days for that?
That is something we're absolutely going to have to explore and work with the bus manufacturer suppliers, think about what the overall procurement strategy is. We have very strong, obviously we buy a lot of buses, very strong relationships with our suppliers, but also want to look more broadly in the market on what the options are available and need to do that work, because we do want to make sure that we have lots of different options on vehicles that will be available for us to make sure we have those highest quality vehicles.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not seeing any further hands for questions. So I'm now going to pass it on to Chair Cunningham, who will facilitate the board discussion and vote on the 10-year priorities plan. So Chair Cunningham.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair Cote, for passing this off to me. So my job here today is to pass the motion for the TransLink board. And the motion is in your package, and it is to endorse Transport 2050 10-year priorities, which is attached in Annex A as TransLink's implementation priorities to begin delivering the 30-year regional transportation strategy, Transport 2050. So could I have a mover and a seconder, and then I'll call for any comments or questions. So Andy, and then Marcella, thank you. Thank you. I just want to say, as you've heard from others, how important this is that we have this in front of us. We all knew when we started Transport 2050 that we would have to start deciding what was going to come first and what was going to come second. And the work that we've done to get to these priorities, I think, has been excellent work, and I appreciate all the contribution from the team at TransLink for doing that. So I have a question from Andy Ross. Andy?
Thank you, Chair. It's more comment than question. I'm of course endorsing and supporting the 10-year priorities. And there was a couple of events that happened this week that sort of put a little bit of perspective in why we do this. And as we've sat around for what seems like years discussing T2050 and getting to this point. I was fortunate enough to be with Kevin on Friday at the launch of the bike bus project out in Swassen. And it was kind of interesting in hearing the comments today about how supportive and how positive this is viewed. Yet it seems not so long ago, this was a controversial issue. You know, bikes were the antithesis of what we should be putting on roads. And there was a political discussions and heated debates. And that too has passed. And it was very interesting looking and listening to people now, looking at Metro Vancouver, excitedly about the expansion of bikeways. And that came about because of visions and plans and consultation and hard work and persuading people that it was a good idea. So we've seen the past become the present and become accepted. And it kind of put me in the mind. I was also at the New Mobility Forum that Mayor Ross talked about as well. As we started talking about the future, the electrification, what we can see, we had a fantastic presentation of what the city of Oslo is doing with its transportation networks. And they all come from a process like this where there is a vision which may not be fully understood and it may not be fully comprehended by the average person that doesn't live and die in this world. But I thought it was very, very interesting that people are now excited. I sat in that room down at the convention center with a whole bunch of people that are enthusiastic about the direction that TransLink and public transportation is taking into this region. So I think that this kind of foundation is ambitious, especially in a time where we're coming through the pandemics. And I congratulate the Mayor's Council and staff and our board for being able to articulate a vision in difficult times. It is not going to be easy. I do want to talk just a little about the BRT. And never to contradict Sarah, but the first one was in 1971, just outside Liverpool. So I'll throw that in there. So it's not a new idea. But I think explaining this to the public is how it differs and what the advantages are will be our challenge. But it's almost a little bit like when Gondola was first talked about. In this region, gondolas were a ski apparatus, not a public transportation. And I think on all of these issues, the success and the sort of non-sexy part of it has been the consultation and engagement. And I think the consultation and engagement in this process has been second to none. In other avenues that I work in, it certainly exceeds that. So it can always improve, it can always get better, but I think both our internal consultation between ourselves discussing these very difficult issues, especially for the mayors and putting regional hats on, but the engagement with the different groups and user groups is a good pathway to the future that will either make or break the success of this. So congratulations to all involved, to the staff for their work, and I fully endorse the proposed 10-year priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Marcella.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham. It's hard to follow that, Andy. I think you've covered the waterfront. So thank you for that. You said 99% of what I had in my mind. But I do want to, I think I'd like to focus on the, Andy referred to it, we've all referred to the BRT. That's really a new technology. Even though Gondola for passenger is new within the region, people are used to the concept of Gondola. We're not used to the concept of a BRT. And I'm really excited that this region is focusing on new and different technology, redundant technology, technology that is more accessible for people to get in and off of, and accessible for installation in due course, the construction as Sarah's talked about. So I think it's, I'm just going to be repeating Andy, it's an incredibly ambitious plan. I think we need an incredibly ambitious plan at this time in our region. I think the region as a whole, I think the Mayor's Council, I think all the people who participated in the consultations have done an enormous amount of work, and kudos to staff once again for pulling all of this together, and the dedication, energy, and passion they bring to every moment on this work. So I thank you all very much. And as you might note, I am supportive of the plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Marcella. Harpinder.
Thank you, Lorraine. Yeah, so my comments are largely focused on the issues around affordability. And we've been under affordability crisis in this area, in this region, for well over a decade or more. I think the very important part of this 50-year plan is the fact that we've shifted away from very expensive focused transit lines, rail lines only, which sometimes take decades even just to get constructed, to more of a immediate need of delivering transportation. And I think this is a major takeaway. I think this is a major issue that will gravitate in support from the public, primarily because of not only us delivering at a lower cost, being able to move people, but also being able to do it in a timely fashion. The climate crisis isn't going away. It's an immediate need. We can't wait another 10 years to plan for another line. We have to start immediately moving people now and shifting away. And I think that tying those issues together alongside the issues around affordability, I think it will be a major win in our region. And I think also it'll be less contentious because now we're able to deliver transit in a much quicker manner and without, I guess, the continual debate between which community will get what. Here is more of an expansive network across the entire region. So I'm fully supporting of this direction and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sandhu. Andrea.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, I think the content's been well canvassed. I guess the one piece I'd add there is that I think yes to everything everyone said, but for me, it all falls under a basket of right sizing, that we don't have to have arguments over this or that. If this happens not to work for that situation, there's broader range of tools, gondolas, bus rapid transit, small buses. Like, I think that is a major innovation moving forward that allows for a much wider range of problems to find solutions. What I did raise my hand to speak to, though, was just to offer thanks. I mean, this is my first run through this as a relatively new board member, and just how amazing it is. We have a very complex governance structure as an organization that is not in our control, as we all know. But to watch the process between the Mayor's Council and the board, I just wanted to offer my appreciation to all the Mayor's Council members, of course the board as well, but particularly to the Mayor's Council members for coming to this in a way that we can all navigate it well. Because I appreciate, having been a former elected, the pressures you're under in your communities are very different than those of us who are appointed to the board. And I just think you've all made it possible, the chairs of the various committees, and particularly wanted to give a shout out to Chair Cote, because I know you and our chairperson, Chair Cunningham, there's a lot of pressure on you to make a challenging governance system fit the needs of this discussion. So thank you for that. And of course to staff who have to fill in all the gaps that those of us on the governance side can't quite find a way to fill in. So thank you, Sarah, and all of your team. Happy to endorse the plan.
Thank you so much, Director Reimer. So I don't see any further hands up. So on that, I will ask for a vote on the resolution at hand. So all those in favor? This is board members only at this point. Thank you. And any opposed? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you all very much. And with that resolution approved, I'd like to ask Mayor Cote to take over the chairing of the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Cunningham. And now it's the Mayor's Council's turn to discuss and review and move towards approval. So I'll open up to the floor to any of the Mayor's Council members. Mayor Little.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be happy to move the recommendation unless you'd like to do it.
No, I'm happy it's been moved. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. I think our colleagues on the TransLink main board have already articulated some of the really great features of this plan. As was said by Andy and several others, it is ambitious, but I think it does reflect the priorities that have been set out by the region. It provides great alternatives to single occupant vehicles in our community, which is really has to be our primary drive at this point. I believe it both recognizes some of the existing challenges. People have talked about the challenges that we have on the North Shore, but also recognizes the challenges of the most rapidly growing communities around our region. And so I think it's going to be a responsive plan in that regard. I think that our main objective needs to be to provide barrier-free access to high-quality public resources within our region. And I think that this plan represents those priorities. So I will be happy to support it.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Mayor Morden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As an immigrant to this country, we live in an absolutely beautiful part of the world, and I love every part of being in British Columbia and in Metro Vancouver. I come from the UK, where public transportation is very available to everybody, and it did evolve over time in many forms of options. Here in Metro, we have quite some significant topographic challenges. But what I love about the way that we've gone about this is that there's a significant shift here to get this right. In the UK, people can't afford cars, a lot of people. And here we're now taking this to deal with GHG and congestion and reduction and looking after our environment in a lot better way. I want to note the comment of the guest presenter this morning referencing the land use. This all comes down to local land use and then regional land use, and I totally support that. In our community, we didn't quite get it right. In fact, we sent a 525-acre plan back for tinkering. We'd like to make sure it's further aligned to 2050. My particular council supports this 100%, and we want to make sure that we get it right, and we think we can get more out of the land than what's in this plan. So that went back at second before it goes to public hearing. I just want to express tremendous support for this plan. I think it catches everything from the social, environmental, and some of the financial pieces yet to come. I think it's very high value return on investment in so many regards. It captures all three of those lenses that we look at. 1 million more people in Metro Vancouver. We're looking for livability and complete communities. All will come about in time with this plan. So I just want to make acknowledgements to staff, both at Metro Vancouver through Mr. Quinn and Mr. Dobroni, as well as all the staff that work there on this collaboration. Also to the collaboration between the board. At my committee at Mobility, we've had the pleasure of both parties at the table and worked through a lot of policy work, and it's been a pleasure to do that. I really enjoyed it from somebody that's not a policy wonk. So acknowledgements there to you, Jonathan, as well for your work, and also to Mr. Buddha as well for assisting us through this process. So fully supportive of the 2050 plan, and to my colleagues for their collaboration as well. I've learned a lot, and it's been a pleasure to work with you through on these two significant achievements, T2050, both transit as well as metro. And now hopefully we will get to implement a 10-year plan, which is pretty amazing because it catches a lot of what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Morden. Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I want to echo some of the comments that have been made. I'll try not to repeat it. I'm feeling a little nostalgic now after some of us are coming to the end of our terms in elected office. And you kind of reflect back at what you've accomplished, or at least had a small hand in accomplishing. And I think that for me, and I think most of the people around this table, we can take pride in having a small part in getting Transport 2050 done, and then this investment plan done, because we are, this is a plan. Well, first of all, I think we should mark the sea change. It was just about 7 years ago, almost today, that the results of the transit referendum were announced in BC, and obviously it resoundingly failed. And the headlines on CBC were, transit referendum fails, transit improvements will be delayed, kind of thing. Or let me just read it to you. I just was looking at it. Transit referendum, voters say no to Metro Vancouver tax and transit improvements. And the arc of how far we've come from that moment 7 years ago to where we are today is remarkable. I think not only is TransLink viewed in a much different light and a much more positive light, I think the importance of transit to the proper functioning of the region is clear to everyone. And most importantly, the commitment to actually do something about it is there and is evident by senior levels of government and also by pretty much every local government. And Andrea mentioned the convoluted governance structure, but what's remarkable to me is no matter how convoluted our governance structure, there's an incredible amount of unanimity and common purpose, and we've managed to coalesce around this plan, and that's a testament, I think, to everyone's contribution, but also to Chair Cunningham and to Mayor Cote, who have, I think it's really had a outsized influence on getting us to a very positive place. So I'm personally satisfied. I really like to thank staff for their work and their patience through the years in guiding us through this. I think we've been well served by the staff, including Mr. Buddha, who often gets left out. And I think we're in a great place. And this, plans are all good and planners love them, but what's more important is getting things done on the ground. And this investment plan it reflects the manifestation of T2050 and the prioritization of changing the transit grid and how the region works. And so this is an excellent step. It's just one step. Of course, I know there's other things that have to happen, funding decisions, but I'll be enthusiastically supporting this and looking back, I think, fondly on this process and where we got to.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Mayor Dingwall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And for myself, both T2050 and the 10-year investment plan are very ambitious, has already been acknowledged, and we all get it. And I think at the root of that, I think is around affordability issues. But having said that, I think, and I've said this before, but I think two of the most important things that collectively we've done over this term is really look at issues around regional equity and supporting all jurisdictions, as well as looking at the affordability issue around new revenue generation tools that can achieve the goals that we're all hoping to achieve. And so I want to end by saying I do support it, but I think everyone has had a hand in this, from the board to the Mayor's Council to staff, but most importantly, I think not only have we had a hand in it, but all communities will see some improvements that will come out of this over the next 10 years, but right up to 2050. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dingwall. Mayor Buchanan.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm going to echo some of my colleagues' comments and some of the board's comments as well. But I'm going to start, and I've referenced this before, but I picked this particular background today from our Zoom call. And this is a photo that comes out of our museum and archives. It's from 1947. When the buses replaced the streetcars in North Vancouver. And that was a year where transit ran a campaign called rails to rubber, which was launched with the goal of modernizing the entire transit system and converting from streetcars to buses. And here we are, 75, 80 years later, and we are at a point where we've been working on a point. We've committed to Transport 2050 in order to modernize our transportation system once again. And really at that time, they were looking at survival of the system and, looking at technology. And we know, I didn't go to the new mobility conference the other day, but I did go to Motivate or Commotion yesterday. And we know mobility is rapidly changing so quickly. Councillor Cameron mentioned, 7 years ago with the referendum. And I do think over the last, last 4 years, 2 to 4 years, the change in people across our region who are demanding better and service to the communities where they live. And we are at this point where we need to be, the word bold has been used several times. We need to be bold. We haven't been bold enough, quite frankly, over the last 20, 25 years or more in this region. And it's exactly what is needed, because we have really designed our region when we thought we were doing a good job back in the 50s and 60s, but we've designed our municipality and our regions for the car, and that has not served people well. And it is only, increased people's frustrations with the mounting congestion that we see day in and day out. So I'm really pleased to support this plan. Transport 2050 was our foundational document, but the priorities in which we're setting, I think, are going to be cornerstone in terms of being able to support people in our region and support at all corners of our region, and also to really address the major challenges in front of us. And we all know what they are. They're economic, they're social, they're the things that we must do in order to address sustainability and the climate that, the crisis that we're in. And so this provides those options for people and how they want to move, regardless of the mode in which they're choosing. Everything we do, which gives people more options, helps us to address all those big challenges. And I would say, I think some people will say, you're moving to, you're just delivering this. It's not gonna provide that. But you know what? We can't wave a magic wand, and we can't go back in time to start this work any sooner. We also can't wait any longer to, indulge in more talk about what is needed, although this will require lots of consultation as we move forward. That's no doubt. But I think what we also need people to understand is what is the cost of not doing this, by not being bold, by not making these investments. Because the economic assessment study that we did on the North Shore, delaying this investment further would mean that by 2050, our region would lose $750 million from our economy every year due to lost productivity and inefficiencies. And that's something we cannot afford at all. So I think as we look to a brighter future moving forward from, COVID, we have many challenges ahead of us still, but I think this is a day that we should feel good about the work that we've done. And I want to thank the board. I want to thank my colleagues on Mayor's Council and staff, but I particularly want to thank the people across our region who have been involved and engaged in this process from the beginning, and have actually pushed us as well to be bold, and hopefully we'll continue to be a voice as we move through implementation. So thank you very much. I'm very supportive of this, and I think this is a good day for the people across our entire region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Buchanan. Mayor Ross.
Thank you very much. I'd certainly echo the comments of everyone in terms of the good things that have come out of this plan, this proposed plan. But I would like to and echo the thank you to everyone that people have given. But I'd like to just talk briefly, not about content, but about process. And I would say that the work by Chair Cote and Chair Cunningham and the ability for both the Board of Directors and the Mayor's Council to come together has, I think, really allowed some pretty outstanding things to happen. And when we're engaged with discussions about governance and where we think it is broken, I think the work done by the Board of Directors and by the Mayor's Council is a very good expression of sometimes getting ahead of government and other people in terms of how you actually make things happen. So I think what we've been doing so many times by coming together and working collaboratively and working together has produced some outstanding results. So I wanted to thank the two chairs for that, the Board of Directors and the Mayor's Council. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor Ross, for all of those comments, and thank you to all of the Mayor's Council members and TransLink board members for the thoughtful remarks regarding the process and then the 10-year priority plan that we've collaboratively been able to work together. It's been a journey over the past year getting to this point, but have really appreciated the engagement and everyone in both those bodies really taking the time needed to lean in and help shape the plan. Obviously, with the incredible support from the team at TransLink. In 2014, the 10-year plan was last adopted by the Mayor's Council, and I wasn't sitting around the table at that time. But that document has been incredibly important in providing that roadmap and guide for the Mayor's Council and the TransLink board over the past decade. We've seen several investment plans adopted during that period, and I don't think those processes and those plans would have been possible if we didn't have have that good guiding document with the 10-year plan helping shaping that work. But that plan was developed in 2013, and we're almost 10 years from that, and it has had a lot of successes. And now it's critically important that we move forward with the next 10-year priorities for our region. Earlier this year, we did adopt Transport 2050, which is a bold long-term vision for the region. But it is critically important that we have the document that comes in between that long-term 30-year vision for the region and investment plan that actually implements that. We do need that guiding document, and I think this 10-year priority plan does just that, and I think will be incredibly useful not only for the next term. With the Mayor's Council and TransLink board, but I think even the next several terms will be an important guiding document that will really help shape and focus the decision making that needs to be moved forward. A number have mentioned that this is a bold plan. It really is an aggressive expansion in transit in the region and really cementing Metro Vancouver as a transit city on a world stage there. And I think we've been developing to this point for many decades in the region, and I think it is an important next step. And although it is a bold plan and one that is going to require a lot of resources, though, I really appreciate the time and effort we put into this plan to really find quicker and cost-effective ways to look at improving transit in the region there. And I think I won't go into the different elements there, but I think there's a lot in these plans that really focus: how do we move quicker? How do we get transit out to our communities faster and in a way that's cost effective in a region that already faces a lot of affordability challenges there? So really proud of those components of the plan there. So very supportive of moving forward. I know the 2025 investment plan seems like a long way away, but the reality is work on that plan needs to start right away. And I think adopting this 10-year plan will certainly help shape and provide the framework and guidance needed for successful 2020 and 2025 investment plan. So with that, I will look to the Mayor's Council if they would like to move. Actually, it's already been moved. Mayor Little moved it right at the beginning of the conversation. So I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
And it's carried unanimously. So thank you very much, everyone. And with that concludes our joint meeting. And thank you very much and congratulations to everyone. I know this has been a lot of work to get us here to this point. And I will look for a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved.
Chair, so moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And carried.